Hello, everyone, and welcome to Compassionate Conversations. I'm Tanys Coughlan from My Place Home Care, and I am joined by my co-host, Heidi Gagne. And we have an extra special guest today, Samoon Tasmim. Hello, Samoon. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Hello. Thank you for having me. Sure. Yeah. So thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you guys. I am a mental health professional. I'm a registered psychotherapist. I work with different populations, different sorts of clients. Mostly I work with racialized clients or clients with, minority who identify as minority in some shape or form. And I'm also a researcher. I kind of research in the mental health field. I teach at university. I'm a part-time professor at St. Paul University, and I also supervise students. So, there are quite a few different hats that I wear as a mental health professional. Yeah.
Busy guy. It's good. So we're here to talk about...
Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, for those of you watching, we do have a bit of a delay. So just be patient with the tech, please. And so tell us a little bit about, because of course, when we talk about marginalized populations, the seniors is one of those as well. So can you maybe tell us a little bit about what you feel some of the biggest sort of things to watch for seniors and their caregivers?
Yeah, so you're right. Seniors are among that group of marginalized populations, and partly because our systems, the way they are designed, they cater more towards the mainstream, the age groups that are more of them and more common in working groups, and we pay less attention to the needs and the challenges of seniors, but their the age group that they are in, the life experiences that they go through, on the contrary, make them more susceptible to mental health related challenges and mental health related issues. So they could be, we need extra attention that we need to pay to their challenges and their issues. And their issues can range from just having feelings of sadness occasionally, and not having someone to talk about those feelings with, or to reflect on whatever they're going to, depression and other high intensity mental health issues, and they could be anything in between as well. We often talk about the elders having no people to talk to, or no companions, or going through loneliness. So their issues, it would be hard to say that their issues are specific to that population, but the intensity, of course, is going to be higher when we talk about elders, partly because they have lived a life where mental health was not as common or as commonly understood piece as it is today. So today we are able to talk a little bit more openly about it, and it's less, there's still stigma, but it's less stigmatized. I think we also have been able to, throughout the course of the few years, develop some language around it. So we are able to talk about it a little bit more openly, because we're not using stereotypical language around it. But they haven't had that, to a large extent, they haven't had that opportunity. So the language still may be missing there, or not as developed as it is for us. Or even though many seniors that I have engaged with are very open and don't see this as a taboo subject, mental health related challenges as a taboo subject, there still might be a little bit of hesitance in their mind to talk about this, and that can be kind of exacerbated by the idea of mental health being associated with weakness, and being elderly being associated with weakness. So it makes it very difficult to be open and talk about this, and that in itself can bring them to a point where, they're between two different pieces, and they have no way of dealing with it without an external support. So that's where the caregivers come in, and those who are there for them and support them. But again, the challenge for caregivers is we don't have a lot of resources, and we don't have a lot of tools for them. They're often left to their own compassion and their own ways of engaging with this. And one of the major challenges, and perhaps we'll go into this a little bit more in detail down the road, but one of the main challenges with caregivers is because of the nature of their work, they're always giving. They're always in this place of being there for others and supporting others. Even for themselves, they don't always think about they are also human beings. They need some support as well. So that lack of support can then lead to them being burnt out and being fatigued. So different layers kind of combine and that have an impact on it. It becomes a bit of a cycle of dealing with issues to an extent where you can just go on, but not find a place where you're a little bit more balanced, a little bit more. Your feet are on the ground. You're not always jumping from one thing to the other. So yeah, it can be a vast number of things with a common theme of um, the ability to talk about these things, the ability to reflect on them, and use the available services that are out there.
I think it's really great that you touched on the stigma and the fact that the seniors now are from a time where you didn't talk about this stuff out loud. You didn't talk to anybody about it. You didn't even talk to your partner, and you didn't talk about money. You didn't, all those taboo conversations. And it's really, really scary to think that, a lot of people that grew up that way and lived their adult life are now a shell and inside and afraid and can't ask for help. And it's so great that mental health now is such a wider, people know about it. I talk about it all the time. I'm like, I enjoyed going to therapy. I was in it for 2 years. It made me such a stronger person. And being able to have that unbiased person to talk to is absolutely amazing. And I cannot say enough about counseling, therapy, and psychotherapists and psychiatrists and everything, because it is so important to be able to talk and get those feelings out. And it's, I think what you guys do as a profession is thoroughly underrated, but getting better. So I think it's really great. And this time of year is very difficult for a lot of people as well, leading up into the holidays. Can you do you know much about seasonal depression? Sometimes there's like the weather depression that you get into. Are there some things that we can think, like look at ourselves if we feel like something's wrong, or a loved one in that aspect? Is there signs? I mean, I don't know what the best term would be for that.
Like red flags to say,
yeah,
to get some help.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. It's an important piece to understand generally. So there are two things I would say, and we'll go into each one as we move forward. But the first one is, I honestly think having those labels and those titles for different mental mental health conditions helps us because it addresses the stigma, and it helps us look it up easily, or learn more about it easily. But it also comes with a downside, because we're not a regular person is not so well versed in mental health related literature to be able to identify what is seasonal affective disorder, what is depressive or major depressive disorder. So even if they tried to look it up, it might be hard for them to understand what are these DSM criteria and all of that. So the labels help us. But what I would suggest for our listeners and people who are providing support to elders is to not be so kind of tied up with the labels. What I would suggest instead is to look at it from a general point of view. So the warning signs would be a really good way of going about it, whether you want to call it red flags or warning signs, or just things to look for. But the important piece would be to differentiate between the feelings of sadness and persistent feelings of sadness. Most of us don't like it. It is an unpleasant emotion, but the idea for us to let it be. It's kind of an unattainable goal for us to say, I don't want to be sad. It's not much of a choice. You don't have a choice. If you're faced with a situation that would make you sad, you are going to be sad. So if you're trying not to be sad, you're kind of creating a conflict yourself. So if it is about that feeling of sadness or sorrow or happiness, the important piece is to first of all allow ourselves and those who are around us to just be okay with that. It's okay to be sad. It's not a problem to be sad. If you didn't get sad, that might actually be a problem. You'd be like, what's going on? Why are you not feeling sad at all? But then it's also important to see how often that happens and how persistent that is. So if it happens every now and then, and when you look at it, there's usually a reason behind it, and you can understand that reason, and the person is able to, either ourselves or another person is able to experience that feeling and get out of it and be able to kind of just go deal with other issues. That's normal. That's something that we need to, again, destigmatize the negative idea associated with sadness. But sometimes what happens is that feeling of sadness is persistent. It stays with the person for a long period of time. It affects their mood. It affects their, it has psychological and physiological or physical impacts. So that's when we need to be a little bit more careful and mindful of what's happening, what's in front of me, or with myself, what's going on. So when we see or experience prolonged feelings of sadness, feelings of loneliness, feeling of being down for a longer period of time, that's when we can label it depression, or we can label it a bit of a depressive episode, and that's when you need a little bit more attention to give to that person or to yourself. There too, again, trying to not go with the labels. There's a difference between depression as a disorder and depression as a state that one is going through. So we all go through depressive states. We are human beings, and we are going to experience situations that are beyond our control. And when you're an elderly person, there's a lot that is not within your control, starting from your own physical health. We can try to control as much as we can, but there's things that are beyond our control. And then the systems we are in, the challenges that brings into the mix. So there's a lot of things that you're not in control of. And that's a hard thing to deal with for an individual. It's not easy to see things slipping away and not be able to do anything about it. So if that feelings of sadness are persistent, and they have an impact on your mood, on the behaviors, it's good to attend to those. So whether if they're feeling lonely, to find a way to address that piece, to give them some company, to find places where they can connect with people, they can have that human to human contact. If it is about, that emotion of sadness, one of the big challenges we have as a society, I would say, is anytime someone talks to us about sadness, our first reaction is, oh, don't feel sad, or don't be sad. But that's not what they need at the moment. They need that space to be opened up for them. Oh, what is it that makes you sad? What's happening? We don't need to be in solution mode all the time. We can be in listening mode too. And many times people just don't need our solutions. They can find their own solutions. They need a listening ear, someone who can be non-judgmental, someone who can just be there with them and ask reflective questions, just give them that space to talk. And that can actually address many depression, as we call it, situations or episodes. Just somebody being there for someone else, and listening, not going into solution mode. And let me just add this, it is difficult for the person who's trying to listen. We're always in that solution mood. So you're going to have to, if you're in the listening position, you're going to have to remind yourself constantly, I'm not going to give solutions. I'm only here to listen. I'm only here to hear what the other person's saying. And if there is any validation to give, I'll just give that validation. So that can address a lot of pieces around depression. If that's also not helping, then that might be a good indicator that there's more to it than just feelings of sadness or unattended feelings of sadness. That's where we try to seek help from professionals. I mean, we can seek help from professionals throughout this course, but at that point, it would be really important for us to, okay, let's talk to a professional who can actually figure out what's happening. I don't believe in the idea of educating everyone on dealing with acute depression, on dealing with depression as a disorder, because it's hard to do that. And if we try to do it, we create this false sense of competence in people, which can be very unhelpful for the person who is dealing with it. So before we get to that idea of seasonal affective disorder, it's important for us to think about these other pieces. Let's not go there before we know all of the other pieces. And let's assume that we have done this and it seems like there is depression going on. We usually, some of these mental health related labels become popular. And those are the ones that we retain because they are used more often. So seasonal affective disorder is, again, one of those. But depression is not just that. And the depressive episode at this time of the year are not just related to that. So the seasonal affective disorder is specifically related to reduced sunlight and, the time of the year where days are shorter, we don't get enough light, and that can have an impact on many people in terms of their mood, in terms of how they can connect with themselves and with others. And it's not to say seasonal affective disorder is not a reality. It is a reality for many people. But it's not just that. This time of the year is associated with so many different things, especially for elderly. It's associated with memories. It's associated with, life, the good things in it, the regrets, the challenges that they've been through. So all of that can combine itself. And again, mental health has been a taboo subject. And it is not as much of a taboo subject right now. So even, I'm just thinking, even that comparative piece of, an elderly seeing the younger population be able to talk about it openly and then reflecting on their own experiences. We were not able to talk about this. So that can also weigh in on you, right? So there's so many different pieces to it that can play a role in this. It can be a major a depressive episode. But for that diagnosis, or that for us to get there, we have to take into account so many different pieces. And the other reason that I don't like going with the labels is the last thing we want is for depression to be associated with identity. And we can see that happening, right? We can see people, I am depressed. Just saying that I am depressed, you're kind of owning it, like, I am depressed, I don't want to let go of it. So you're not really thinking that way. But because we talk about in these years, you seem to be depressed. We're just giving it that status of, okay, this is who you are. But people are not just that. They're going through an episode of depression. They're dealing with depression. Sometimes they're struggling with depression, but they're not depressed. So the more we go, oh, you have seasonal affective disorder, you have major depressive disorder, you have bipolar disorder, that's the signal that we give, the sign that we give to the person is like, oh yeah, this is what you are. Your name is Tom and you have seasonal affective disorder. Those two pieces can just easily be associated. So it's good for us to rethink the way we articulate this and talk about it with elders. It can address that stigma because they can see, oh, this is not, that's a different way of putting it. Yeah, I'm dealing with a depressive episode. So just by reframing it in that way, what we're trying to do is we are disassociating it from identity. You're not depressed. This is just something that you're dealing with. And just by adding the word episode there, it's not going to be there forever. It had a starting point and it will have an ending point. Episodes don't last forever. They end. We're not saying it, we're just suggesting it. So yeah, before we talk about the red flags or the warning signs or anything, the few pieces that I think are really important and needs more attention. Yeah. So let's say we've taken this into account and we want to look at signs and symptoms. The biggest ones are, there's persistent feelings of sadness. There is feelings of loneliness. Sometimes with people, there are feelings of or thoughts of suicidality. They most of the time don't have a plan for it, or they're not like actively thinking about it, but those thoughts occur. If they're at a point where they're actively thinking about it, or they have a plan, or they've thought of a plan, that's I would say one of the biggest red flags. We need immediate attention, because that's that's a point where some professional needs to intervene and try to help that person deal with those thoughts and with the depressive symptoms. But if we're seeing the other symptoms of loneliness or changes in appetite, can be a big one. Both ways, it can go. Sometimes the appetite can go higher without any specific reason. So with elders, one of the things that we need to be mindful of is increase in appetite can be a result of some medications too. So we don't just want to see, oh, your appetite has increased, you probably are going through depression. No, we want to see what is going on. And if it is sadness and loneliness and increase in appetite or decrease in appetite, then that might be like, okay, I think something's going on. Let's see what's happening there.
Could that also include like perhaps drinking more alcohol?
Yeah, so that would be a big indicator. Whatever it is, whether it's alcohol or some people use other recreational drugs, a change in frequency of that or quantity of that can be a good indicator that something's happening, something's going on there. Again, I would reiterate that we're not going to diagnose anybody with depression or anything, but the idea is, okay, there's need for more attention at this point. So they can be good indicators. One thing that we want to pay attention to is if that's happening for more than 2 weeks, most of the day, almost every day, then that could be the indicator. So if it is like, a good way to remember is if it is happening for 2 weeks, most of the day, every day, or almost every day. So if the person is feeling sad and lonely almost all day, and they don't find those times of, different feelings, whether it's happiness or, joy, or even just being content with wherever they are, it happens almost every day, and that continues for 2 weeks, then that could be a really good call for us to like, okay, let's figure out a professional intervention. The degree of it and the intensity of it, again, there's a lot of different factors that go into it, and a lot of assessments. Like as professionals of mental health, we don't look at the person and talk to them for a few minutes and figure out like, okay, this is what you're going through. It takes us multiple sessions, many conversations to get to that point. So yeah, those could be good warning signs for ourselves or for others. See, you let me talk, I'm going to talk forever. So you guys have to
Perfect.
come up with questions.
That's the teacher and teacher in you that is
That's
very,
true.
Awesome.
very
True,
easy
yeah.
to listen to you. I'm enthralled because this is quite a topic that has been big in my life over the last 10 years. And my whole family is in therapy.
Yeah.
And we love it. But it was like what you were saying is having that unbiased person to speak to, whether you have huge issues in your life that you need to talk over, or the fact that you have so many little things and you don't want to be placated by other people. You want to be able to have some kind of sense of relief when you're talking about it. And I've done it for my friends. I've had a lot of friends. I have a couple of friends that I talk to a lot, and I get to the point and I'm like, okay, guys, I want to help you. I have no idea what to say to you to help anything. I don't know what to say. I think that you need to find a professional person to talk to, because what if what I say is the wrong thing and it sets you spiraling to something different? And one word could do it. If somebody is at that stage and are floundering and feeling so overwhelmed with all these feelings, one thing I could say, even if I could easily say something like, well, I don't think it's that bad, and boom, done, and you don't mean to say it that way. But I also liked how you were talking about, active listening and not always problem solving. I used to do that for my oldest daughter. She would call me and say, oh, Heidi, this is what's going on. I don't know what to do. And I would give her, I'm like, oh, here's some solutions. And then she would never take any of my advice. Ever. So I got tired of it. I'm like, okay, well, listen, do you want a solution? Are you just venting? Do you need me to go, oh, baby, I'm so sorry? Like, what do you want from me as your support network? Because if you just want to vent, I'm down. You want to, ride at dawn? I'll ride at dawn with you, But I think that is also an important part of speaking with people and talking with family, and watching that is how do they respond when you say, okay, are we just venting, and kind of it helps guide your conversation so you're not making it harder for them to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that also brings up the, instead of them just doing it, it helps them to be self-reflective when you say that, right? Are you just venting, or is this something you are looking for a solution? It helps them to look at what is it that they do
I want?
Or because sometimes when we get caught in those cycles, right, those mental cycles, we start to just be in that rabbit wheel of thought, or the hamster wheel of thought, right?
Right.
We're just going around and around, and that's not always helpful either. So sometimes a comment like that, what is it that you need? It makes them stop and step out of that hamster wheel and go, okay, they're asking me what I need. And it shows them that you care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
I think that's great.
Yeah. One thing I tell, I mostly tell this to immigrants who are new to the system, to the Canadian society, and they are also dealing with a lot of stuff. But I think that could easily apply to elders too. Is it's not. So we have both kinds of friends, the problem solvers and the listeners, and they both play a very important role in our lives. God knows we would not be able to do it without the problem solvers. They help us think creatively a lot, but also we have the people who listen to us and just be reflective. But that might not always be the case. So if you find yourself at a point where you have the problem solver bunch and they're there for you and you appreciate them, but you don't have the listeners, a good way to deal with that is to pair up. So you find someone for yourself with whom you make a contract, you make an agreement that, hey, every time I call you, let's have an understanding that your role is not going to be a problem solver. I have plenty of those. I don't want you to be that. If I'm calling you, the idea is just to talk, just to vent, or just to reflect, or just to I don't want any problem solving from you. All I want is validation or just reflective conversation, and I'll do the same for you. So every time you call me, I'm going to intentionally remind myself and be in that state of mind where I'm just going to listen. So even if I have a solution, I'm going to swallow it. I'm not going to say it. I'm going to ask a reflective question instead. So that can, that bond, that reflection buddy system can actually be a good filler of the gap until you are able to kind of build that network for yourself, and figure out how to use that network. So I think it would very much make sense for the elders too. If you have another person who you can have that, okay, I need someone who I can reflect with. And if I call you or if I am trying to chat with you about something, remember that I'm not expecting you to solve my problem for me. I'm expecting you to reflect. If I wanted to solve a problem with you, I would explicitly tell you that. I'd be like, okay, I need your help. Can you put on your problem solver hat and let's figure this out? Other times, it's just reflection. So it's because in reality, when you look around you, you have more problem solving friends than those who can be reflective, right? We can intentionally build that system. And it helps both of us, right? I have someone and they have someone. So that could be a good filling that gap of, I don't know, I don't have that kind of person. It can address that piece as well.
Just talking,
holding space for each other.
Yeah.
Right.
And just being open with your friends and just say, or you're a caregiver and you're like, hey, like, do you want me to help, or can we just talk? And I think that's also really important. And it takes the pressure as a caregiver off of you to fix all their problems, because let's be honest, as a caregiver, you're fixing a lot of things. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're POA, if you are, like if you're doing all these decisions and you're forced to do it because you love your parent or your aunt and uncle, I mean, being able to just sit down and talk to them and just listen to what they say is almost relief on yourself, because you don't have to, I'm not fixing this, I'm just listening.
Yeah.
And that speaks to the difference too in the when you are a family member and then you become the caregiver, it's like adding a different role. And sometimes we lose that, the mother-daughter relationship or whatever, right? You're no longer mother-daughter, you're mother-caregiver. And so it's important for us to sort of keep that role going, I would say, as a mother-daughter in that situation as well, right?
Yeah, I agree. The additional layer that I would reflect on with caregivers is when we talk about these kind of situations, we talk about the receiver of the care and the caregiver. And the caregiver is trying to be everything and anything for the receiver of the care. And because the other side is receiving care, they don't have much to offer to the caregiver. So caregivers are often left alone, left to their own tools. So it's equally important for caregivers to reflect on that for themselves and find that buddy for themselves. Because, you know, this is a dyadic relationship, but it's a mostly one-way dyadic relationship. You're, as a caregiver, you're trying to give as much as you can. So even in this situation where you're trying to be reflective and listening, you're giving that listening ear. You know, the elder might not always be able to do that for you. It might also not be feasible because, you know, if you want to vent about this elder, you can't vent to them.
No.
So you gotta have to find that support network for yourself. And that brings me to this other piece. Again, it might be a bit of a taboo subject, but whenever we see caregivers, the idea of self-care is often associated with selfishness for them, which is such a, you know, I'm like, no
Thing to think. You don't
couldn't
need
be
to.
far from reality.
Exactly.
Self-care is a necessity.
It's a necessity, especially when you're in that space. You have to have it, and that's a process of its own. How do you actually figure out what self-care means for you? I talk about self-care a lot, and one of the things that I always mention is with self-care, you're up against at least a multi-million-dollar industry. So what you know of self-care right now most probably is not self-care, because there's these, you know, industries that are trying to push different ideas under the banner of self-care onto us. I think a few weeks ago, I saw an ad. I don't remember, was it on YouTube or somewhere? A credit card company was trying to sell a credit card under the idea of, this is your self-care credit card. You can earn points and go to Europe. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is bad. You guys are like, so you're against that whole industry. Self-care is not spa day alone. It's not going to long vacations. They're part of it, and they can be. I'm not saying they're not. They can be, but that's not it. There's more to self-care than that. You need to be able to figure out what you need as a person. And what you need on a psychological level, what you need on a physiological level, what you need on a behavioral level, and then try to figure out what can help you in that, what can support you in that, and you can integrate it into your day-to-day life. And from there, you kind of start caring for yourself. It's not getting a credit card or going on spas that you obviously can't afford, or it's going to be a burden on you. So if we think of it in those terms, we're like, okay, it's either selfish or expensive. But self-care doesn't have to be any of those. It can just be, you know, I'm on my feet all day trying to take care of things, trying to, you know, manage different pieces. Self-care for me is for an hour during the day, I'm going to find time to rest. Just lay down somewhere, grab a book if I'm a book reader, and read a few pages. So that will go way or address way more issues than you trying to plan for a spa day in 6 months and then trying to have that 1 hour or 2 hours. So we need to be thinking about that as caregivers. What is my self-care? What does it look like? And self-care has to be, it's not an option, it has to be intentional. I come across so many of my clients, they tell me, yeah, I decided to take the bus because I wanted to take the walk for my self-care. And I was like, no, like, you took the walk to catch the bus. You didn't take the walk to care for yourself.
Yeah.
The purpose or the intention behind any activity that you do for self-care has to be self-care and self-care alone. If you associate anything else to it, you're not addressing your own needs. You're trying to do multiple things at the same time. So caregivers are also in need of thinking and figuring out what self-care means for them. Part of it may be finding that buddy who listens to you, because it is a burden to listen to somebody. And if you're offering that to someone you care for, then you should have someone who can listen to you, who can give you that space. It can be a chain effect. They need to find someone for themselves. But again, we need to normalize this idea of, I just need someone to listen to. I just need someone to talk to. One of the benefits, and just kind of struck me, one of the benefits of the 12-step program in the addiction treatment is that space. Everybody gets to stand up, say whatever is on their mind, and nobody's going to judge them. Nobody's going to offer them any solutions. They're just going to be there for them. And that alone can be so much, can bring so much of relief. So imagine if we were able to kind of borrow that piece from it and implement it in our own lives, and give each other that space to just reflect. Then caregiver can also be addressed from a mental health point of view.
I find it interesting that the story about the credit card company and how self-care is now a advertisement word. And just listening to you talk made me realize when my youngest daughter was very little, I was home with her until she was like 2.5. And my best time of day was my husband loved giving her bath. Bath time was his favorite time. So literally after dinner, he would take her upstairs. They would go in the bath for 45 minutes. And I literally would sit on the couch and I would drink a glass of wine, or I would read a book, or I'd watch a TV show. I wouldn't worry about the dishes. I didn't worry about the toys all over the place. It was that 45 minutes of me just doing what I wanted to do. And looking back, that's how I was able to be calm. And that was my regulating time. That was my time of just me. And so a family friend, when his daughter was pregnant with her first child, for her baby shower, I actually found out what her favorite wine was. And part of, I did a bath theme, and I gave her a bottle of wine. And I said, listen, you send dad to give the bath and you sit for that time and you just relax and you drink your wine and do whatever. And that is like the most regulating way to deal with things in your life. It's just, you just have that. And now as my youngest is 16, my group of friends that I have, like, we'll have a group chat and suddenly somebody will be like, oh my gosh, I need a coffee. Who's down? And we'll go for an hour. Yeah. And again, that is self-care. That's their self-care. They need to get out of the house. They need to do something that's just for them. And that's what they chose as their self-care at the moment, because we are a group of friends that will listen. We do that. And we do have the I'm just venting, or I'm just, I need solutions. Please help me, guys. What do I do? So even that simple thing of somebody saying, I need to, like, it's not a big lavish thing. We don't go out and spend hundreds of dollars. We literally go to Tim Hortons or McDonald's and get a coffee.
Yeah. That's, I understand. I'm probably opening another Pandora's box there, but I just want to address that. So what you just described, I actually make a bit of a distinction between what that is and what self-care actually can be. So not to discredit the effect of what you're doing, but just to kind of encourage everybody to do a little bit more. So I make distinction between self-maintenance and self-care.
Okay.
The idea is, if you're at a point where, I'll just take your example of, oh my God, I need coffee, who's down? That's self-maintenance. You've gotten to a point where I can no longer do this unless I do this thing for myself. So you're maintaining yourself. You're just kind of keeping yourself afloat. The way to turn that into self-care would be to make it regular. Every 2 days, every 3 days, every once a week, I think it would be a good idea for us to meet.
Okay.
So it's not like, oh my God, I've had a very rough week. I need an hour to catch up with you guys, or just sit with you guys. That's very useful, and not many people do that. So I'm really glad you guys are doing it. But
Take us a lot.
yeah. So if you were like, okay, does it make sense for this group to meet once a week? Does
Right.
it make sense for this group to meet once every 2 weeks? We would still have that in between. Somebody needs self-maintenance break. Sure, let's just do that. But there's also a more streamlined, more process, planned approach to it, where we know this is going to be our me time, as we call it, or our us time. The benefit of that is hope is a big theme for us as human beings. So when you have something waiting for you down the road, you're like, okay, I have a rough week, but at the end of the week, I'm going to meet with my friends. So that's going to be a big relief. That can keep you going on for a longer period of time. It would reduce the need for self-maintenance, but help you regulate yourself better, because there's something to hold on to, and you're continuously working, pushing through. We're all pushing through. And at that time, when you're meeting those people, you're there. Okay, I'm not going to worry about everything that's been going on. I'm just going to be myself and recharge. We can do the same. The same can be done with elders or caregivers. So if you're a caregiver, plan a chunk of time for yourself.
You call us.
Yes. Yeah. And that chunk of time could be anything. Use it for whatever you want to do. But the intention needs to be self-care. If we let ourselves only to be continuously maintained, we're going to break down at some point. But the example of it, it's a silly example, but the example of it is, a car enthusiast and a regular person. A regular person will only bring the car to an oil change when either they've received multiple calls from the dealership, or they're like, I kind of have to do this. So they'll have to bring it. But a car enthusiast would not even think about that. They'd be like, oil, that's for sure, but there's so many other things that I need to take care of. And their car lasts for way longer.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
Great analogy.
Very good analogy.
We change our cars every now and then, like every few years. Their car increases value as it goes, as time passes by, because they're caring for it. They're not just maintaining it.
That's epic. That is never even thought of that, of associating the two together like that. I'm using that. I hope that's not patent, because I'm totally using that. That is amazing. That is such a good analogy that any adult, I mean, obviously teenagers don't hit the car at this yet, but oh man, I mean, almost every adult has had to deal with some kind of vehicle at some point. Oh. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm using that.
And I think almost every adult has had somebody who's kept their car in a perfect condition, and they're like, oh, I wish my car was like that.
Yeah. Like I bought a used car, a car from somebody, and they were like, oh, we've only used ever like premium gas and the premium synthetic oil. I'm like, oh, well, this car is going to be in a shock.
Yeah.
That's not what I do.
Yeah. So it's a good way of looking at it. And I think it doesn't have to be specific to any person. It can be anyone. We're all, I don't think anybody would say they're in a good space, comfortable space in today's age. Everybody would have their own struggles, some more than others. Some more intense situations than others, or even one person at one time may be intense than another time. But we all have these issues, these challenges that we constantly deal with. If we bring that mindset of, I'm going to care for myself regardless of what's happening in the moment for me, that can help us stay on top of things for a longer period of time. So if we're talking about elders, yes, they have a lot of issues that they're dealing with. There's no denying that. But if they were able to figure out a self-care mechanism for themselves, that can help them, and obviously would help the caregiver even more, because they have one less thing to worry about. And again, self-care is not this outlandish stuff. Just doing simple things, figuring out simple ways of doing things, only keeping in mind it has to address your psychological, it has to address your physical, it has to address on some degree your behavioral aspects. You're good. It's just finding 1, 2, or 3 activities, and you'll be able to deal with it way better than others. And obviously, if you want, and if you find the value in it, you can always seek therapy. Therapy is, the way I articulate it is, therapy is for anyone who has had a life to live, good or bad. There's something that you can gain from therapy. My clients who have stayed with me the longest are not the clients who have acute issues of mental health in like those high intense situations. They're the clients who don't have those serious issues, but they want to reflect on their life. They want to just have that space to talk about things. And each session, they learned another thing about themselves. They learned another piece about themselves. So I'll give you another one, Heidi. The way I talk about therapy with people and clients is, think of yourself as a book that you've started writing, added chapters to it every now and then. You know, every new thing that happened, every year that passed, we're at the end of a year now. Every year that passed, you added chapters to that book, and you've been carrying that book all your life. But most of us, if not all, have not read that book cover to cover. We just think, because I wrote it, I know what's in it. Not really.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Well, and that's a big part of our journey here as humans, right? Is to really like step into getting to know ourselves in that way, in that deep understanding.
Yeah. So
and how the past affects now.
Yeah, you can open that book in a non-judgmental space and see what's in it, what you wrote.
This is why I love therapy, because and having a counselor to talk to. No, like I am a very vocal advocate for therapy, because I luckily have experienced 2 amazing therapists, and I seriously would not be where I am right now without that 2-year journey, because I've had to be the primary thinker, mental load carrier for my little family for quite a while, as my members of my family have learned and received various diagnoses, and I was carrying it all. I was the regulator for everybody. I made sure that things were calm, so this person didn't have a breakdown or a freak out or a emotional outburst, and it became too much. I couldn't do it anymore. So my self-care was to go and find somebody that I could talk to, and I had like it was regular sessions for 2 years. I did it, and I am so glad I did. Well, Tanys and I have talked about this before after interviews and stuff. She's been a very good help as well for me to speak to somebody non-judgmental. But yeah, it's that it's that nonpartisan. It's that somebody that can help you look at those feelings and think about, where did they come from? What can I do with them? How can I turn this into a learning experience, or how can I make this more positive for me to move forward from? And you can be any age to do that. You just need to reach out and ask for that help.
Yeah.
And what's your view on? I've heard people speak about this, your self-care and stuff, or caring, almost as a bank account. So you're putting out as a caregiver all the time, and then you end up in a deficit in that bank account. So that's another analogy I've heard. And so the self-care or your self-maintenance is like putting money in that bank account so that you can draw from it. How do you feel about looking at it like that with that analogy?
No, that sounds really good, because we don't have infinite emotional energy. In being in a caregiver position, whatever the situation might be, is a place where you use most of your emotional energy. Ask anyone who's given care. The emotional energy is way more than the physical one. They would take the physical side any day if there was a little bit of relief from the emotional side. Because physical is like, I can build strength. If I'm, this strong today, I can build strength, and I'd be way more strong in a month or so. But emotional energy, I don't know if we can increase that by that proportion. Like, we can try, but it's not like we don't have infinite energy. And you're also, the other challenge with emotional energy is it doesn't get filled as quickly as physical energy is refilled, right? If you're tired, 15 minutes, half an hour of break can give you that energy boost back. Getting a nice meal, getting the drink that you really like, can give you that boost back. With emotional energy, it's not that easy. It takes more time, it takes more effort, it takes more resources. So we do run out of that energy. So that analogy of a bank account, you're constantly giving money out. If you don't put anything in, there's going to be a time where you don't have anything left. The only difference in that would be if there is nothing left in a bank, people would just go away from it. People are not going to leave you alone. You're going to have to keep doing it. So you go in deficit. You go in like borrowed energy, borrowed money, let's say, in here. So it's always good to, while you're giving, try to give back. And connected to the self-maintenance piece, if you always brought in the money that you gave out, you're not prepared for a difficult situation. So if you spend 10 and you bring back 10, if something happened and you had to spend 50, you're in deficit. So self-care is doing more than that. If you're spending 10, make sure you bring back 15. So you're prepared. But also, you're also a human being. You need a few bucks for yourself. It's not, your life is not about just that other person. You also have a life of your own.
Any other people.
Yeah, and that can be energy consuming. We spend a lot of our emotional energy on ourselves. We don't really talk about it, but it is the reality. We do spend some energy on ourselves. So yeah, I do like that analogy.
My therapist used spoons. You only have so many spoons. If you give a spoon to somebody else and you give all your spoons out, what do you have for yourself? How are you going to eat? How are you going to survive? If you don't have a spoon to eat, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And it really does, these little things that might not seem like big analogies or metaphors are really, really, when you need something to focus on, you need something that you can like picture. People, you can't picture your draining mental states and all that kind of stuff, but holding 4 spoons in your hand and saying you need to give a spoon to your partner, you need to give a spoon to your child, and now you need to give a spoon to your parent, and now you need to give a spoon to your work. What are you going to do? You got no spoons left. And that visualness really, like, it hit me, and I was like, oh, and I started using that. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't have the spoon for that. I can't give you it. I don't have spoons.
No, that's very nice. Yeah.
And also learning that no is a full sentence.
Yes. That's a big piece.
No is a full
Boundaries,
sentence.
right? All about the boundaries.
Not feeling guilty for putting those boundaries up.
I think, I think it's a little bit more than boundaries for me. Because when we say boundaries, it becomes a discussion on whether I've identified my boundaries or not, and whether I can maintain them or not. Many of us are able to do both. But because we're not comfortable with the idea of saying no, it becomes harder to maintain those boundaries. So it's not a matter of, do I have boundaries or not? Yes, I do. But am I comfortable with the discomfort of saying no? It's not a comfortable thing to say no.
No.
Especially when you're a compassionate, empathetic, kind person. It's very hard to say no. You want to do as much as you can, but bringing yourself to be comfortable in the discomfort of that. That can actually be a good self-care piece. Just bring yourself to that, and it can be a lot of things. And when you feel that discomfort on a continuous basis, again and again coming back to you, and you're not able to deal with the discomfort, it's not about you. It's about the other side, because people push that a lot.
Respecting your boundaries.
Yes.
Definitely.
And there's so many different ways people can be. People can gaslight you. People can make you feel guilty about it. It makes sense for them. They're not getting what they want, so they'll try to do as much as they can to get what they want. Yeah. But does it make sense for you to continue feeling uncomfortable about it? No. Let them do whatever they need to do for themselves to getting their needs addressed. I'm not saying like you need to fix them. No, forget about that. That's not your job. If they are gaslighting, okay, just forget about that. What are you going to do? Mm-hmm. Are you going to give in, or are you going to do your own, like, okay, this is not about me. This is the biggest thing I tell people. Figure out what's about you and what's not about you. Most of the things you feel guilty about are not about you. So just like, you don't need to feel like there's no need, just drop it.
I often talk about like we're only really responsible for our own actions and reactions, because we can't control anybody else's actions or reactions. Right? As long as, and our responsibility is to deliver things in a compassionate, kind way, whether it's speaking our truth or stepping into that maintenance of a boundary or things like that. We definitely tend to want to take on others' responsibility in that way, right? And it's not our responsibility. If they're having a hard time and we've spoken our truth, we can support them and listen, but it's really not our responsibility to fix their reaction, right?
Yeah. Or I've had that conversation with my youngest many times, because she's a rule follower, very much like me, very procedural. This is how we're doing it. Okay, great. Step 1 through 5, done. But it would frustrate her because the kids into her class were supposed to line up straight and be quiet. And there would be 3 people that would never do that. But the problem is in this case, her entire class would get in trouble for it. So she would be affected by them. But as she got older, she would be like, well, they're doing it. They're talking out in class and everything. I'm like, okay, you can't change other people, but you can change how you're going to react to it. And if your reacting is either telling them to stop or ignoring it or commiserating with your eyes with the teacher, so be it. But there's a lot of things that people do that you can't control, and you don't need to get sucked into that. So you need to put your boundary up, and you're not going to get sucked into that. Or if friends are having issues, again, you need to be, yes, you can be supportive. You can talk to your friends. You can talk, but bottom line, what they do is on them. You can't do it.
Yeah. It's that whole idea of locus of control, right? You got to start working with what's within your control first.
Yes.
If you start working with that, then you don't even get a chance to try and focus on what's outside your control, because you've addressed it. This is within my control is not to let it bother me, even though it's having an impact on me. So if that's where you've drawn your line, you don't even care about whatever that is happening with them. And being able to do that can actually be useful or empowering in terms of self-advocacy, because what you can do for yourself in that moment, let's just take your daughter's example here, is you're not focusing on fixing others. You're focusing on what can I do about this? And soon you'll realize, okay, what I can do for myself is to advocate, to talk to the teacher and say, I've seen this happening over and over again. The class seems to be disruptive or not following the directions, and I seem to be getting in trouble for it. I'm not asking you to give me, special treatment, but pay attention. I might not be in that group, so find a way not to punish me for the mistakes of others. So you're not caring about other people, but because you're within like your own locus of control, you're advocating for yourself. That's
which is actually what I ended up doing during that situation when she was younger in the elementary schools. I ended up contacting the school and saying, stop punishing the entire class for those 3 people. You need to stop. It's not their fault.
No.
Yeah, that's, again, like I said, the world is not going to be a perfect place. There's going to be many a times where unjust, improper procedures are going to be in place. If you're focusing on other people, that procedure maintains itself. You're just focused on the wrong thing there. If you focus on yourself, you might actually be able to change things for better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
one piece that I thought of earlier was I talked about therapy, and we all talked about it and discussed it. One change in the way we think about therapy is it doesn't always have to be talk therapy. It doesn't have to be 2 people sitting with each other talking about stuff and using language for it. It can have multiple forms. So one of the pieces that I think I missed out when I introduced myself was I'm also a co-founder of Hosa Counselling and Research. So it's an organization where we do research in mental health and social sciences. We also kind of experiment with different ways of engaging with mental health. So we're working on creating a bit of a space where art and therapy can be combined. So, just some paint, a canvas, an art expert and a mental health expert. And we try to combine the two, so you don't have to be under the pressure of, I need to figure out the right language to express myself and what's going on for me. Not everybody can do that. It's more, figure out how color can help you. Figure out how strokes can help you with that. And what does that mean for you? And so you make an art and I come stand beside it, and what does that mean for you? What do you see in it? And what do I see in it? And that can also kind of create that space of expression, space of talking about things, but not have the pressure of, we're going to sit in a closed room, you there, me here, and I'm going to ask you questions. You need to be able to articulate yourself well. As therapists, we don't pressure people to do that, but that is the impression we have, like, I need to be taught. My therapist talks so eloquently, I need to be able to talk like that. No, you don't have to, but let's just create that, like a different way of operating so that barrier doesn't exist. So therapy doesn't have to be that, it can be anything.
And I think it's important to note that, you don't have to be an artist to do that kind.
No.
Right? It's about the process of what you're doing and what it expresses,
Exactly.
not about like whether it's art,
I'm
art museum worthy.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have to be good.
I'm colorblind. I don't know most of the colors. It's not if I can do it, you guys can do it. Anybody can do it, because it's not about we're not selling the art piece.
Right.
We're trying to use it as a way of expression, as a way of just creating more space to talk about these things. Yeah.
It helps to have my daughter has art therapy. That's her form, because she is very interested in art, but she also finds it easy to then talk because she's concentrating on the art. And so when her therapist asks a question, because she's concentrating on stroking the paint and everything, it stops that barrier of I shouldn't be talking about this, and it just allows you to feel. And again, big advocate of therapy. any kind.
Thank
Well,
you.
and I've heard, sometimes talking, your teenagers not willing to open up that much when you're sitting at the dining room table or something, and this could be for seniors as well. They might not want to sit and chat like this, but if you sit beside them on a couch or in the car,
Are the best.
you often find they're not as intimidated by the intimacy of talking face to face, right?
Yeah, I attribute that mostly to, again, our approach of being a problem solver than being a listener.
Okay, yeah.
Because whether it's teenagers or elders or even like everyone in between, when you're talking about something, you're not expecting to be judged on it. I mean, readily you're not expecting. But the first question, if the first question is, but why? So why didn't you? Or anything of that sort, you started closing off from that point.
Mm-hmm.
But if we come at it, generally everybody come at it from a point of view of being curious and trying to learn as much as you can about the story that they're trying to tell you, then you can already see the change it brings in the dynamics. We can all experiment with this. You're in a group. If somebody starts talking about something, instead of analyzing it and giving your opinion or asking a question that would be, so answer this for me, why, in a judgmental way, ask questions that are more curious.
Mm-hmm.
So just find little pieces that they didn't elaborate on and ask questions about that.
How did that make you feel? What came? And the feeling one can be a little bit,
Yeah,
always
so
express.
that one can be intimidating for someone who's asking the question and answering the question. It can just be, I had a coffee with my friend the other day, and it went really well. Oh, okay. Where did you have the coffee?
Yeah.
So they'll tell you, oh yeah, we went to, I don't know, Tim Hortons on some place. Oh, nice. How was the weather? The weather was nice, but we were inside and we were chatting about this, and this couple walked in, all of those pieces. So you're not trying to analyze, you're not trying to do more stuff. What you're trying to do is just ask little pieces and see how the conversation expands.
Yeah.
And people feel more comfortable with you talking, because you're not trying to judge them. You're just trying to create more space. Try it with your kids, and you will see the difference.
It's true. It's that question of how was school? Oh, what'd you do at school? Oh. And I remember when I had so my stepdaughter, my oldest, was 12 when I met her, and that's what I would ask her, but she really wouldn't answer it very well. So when my youngest was born and she started going to school, I'm like, well, I'm gonna do a different conversation, and I'd be like, hey, so what was your favorite part of today? Oh, did you guys did you play in the monkey bars at recess? No. Oh, why? Oh, well, we were doing this instead. Oh, cool. And was Mrs. Manish there? Did you get to talk to your teacher? Did you get, just little things like that, and then and that's all it would take.
Yeah.
We started at the dinner table when my son was young. We started so one thing that you were disappointed in today, but like 3 that what really stood out as awesome parts today. I wanted to make sure that he could voice the stuff that was concerning him, that was big, but I also wanted to make sure he had lots of time to have a joint celebration of the successes, that he might have had that day.
Yeah, so different ways of engaging with others where they don't feel judged or they don't feel answerable to you, right? So all of those can be very helpful in exploring it further, yeah.
Well, sounds like you might be needed.
It does.
But we are a little over time.
Yes. And we thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
I appreciate the conversation. It's always lovely to talk to people who you can talk about these things openly, and I'm really glad you guys are kind of having these conversations, making it more mainstream.
We hope that people will be able to take even a little bit and kind of apply it to their life, and if it makes their life or their loved one's life just a little bit easier, then we've done our job, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you so much, and we hope you'll join us again sometime soon.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you. I'd be glad to come back. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we will see you.